Hello, I'm Terrence Cannon.
And I'm Tiffany Ramos.
And today we're talking with Brandi Binkley from the Macon County Health Department, and we're going to be focusing on food safety today.
When we talk about unsafe foods, what are we talking about?
Well, usually when you're thinking about unsafe foods, it's going to be in regards to how it's prepared, how it's cooked, when you eat it. There are a lot of things to consider from the time that you are in the grocery store, purchasing the food and making sure that it's safe, it's not expired, it doesn't look or smell funny, to the time that you start preparing it on your kitchen counter, to when you're cooking it, and then getting it in the refrigerator afterwards. So the definition, I think, of unsafe food is pretty broad in saying that something that's not safe for you to consume, it might make you sick, you might have some issues with bacteria.
What happens to our bodies when we eat unsafe food?
Well, if you eat unsafe food, it's usually going to be something that's maybe expired or something that's been sitting out that has had the opportunity for bacteria to grow on it. So what's going to happen to your body is sometimes your body's going to be able to fight that and you're not going to have any issues. But then sometimes you're going to have a case of food poisoning, which is going to make you sick. Depending on the person, depending on the level of bacteria is going to then determine how sick they are. And you don't always get sick every time you eat something with a little bacteria. So it really depends on what you have, how healthy you are, and how able your body is to fight that off. But you definitely are going to be at risk of having food poisoning.
Is it safe to eat cookie dough?
If the cookie dough does not have raw eggs in it, then it should be safe. A lot of people eat the stuff with raw eggs in it anyway, and they're just fine. So I think it's one of those things, some people just decide whether or not they want to take the risk. If you don't have the raw egg in there, you're not really going to have the risk unless you let the other stuff sit on the counter for hours, and then it will grow bacteria. So just like any other food, you take the precautions, but then sometimes people take the risk too.
Yeah.
What if we ate leftover cold pizza?
Leftover cold pizza, well, it depends on, did you leave the pizza out on the table while you're hanging out with your friends and it sat there for 5 hours and then you ate some more of it? That's obviously going to be an issue. When you let something sit out and you don't get your leftovers properly stored in the refrigerator in an airtight container, it's going to start growing bacteria. So that can be dangerous. And then if you do store something in the refrigerator and you go to eat it without warming it up until it's nice and hot, that could then pose a risk to you as well. Now, both of you probably know people who have eaten cold pizza and have been fine. That again goes back to the issue of, how much bacteria, how healthy are you? So again, it's do you choose to accept the risk? But there's definitely a risk anytime you let something sit out, or if you don't warm it up, if it's a food that needs to be warmed up when you take it out of the refrigerator.
Do we often think we have the flu when we have eaten unsafe foods?
There's a lot of misconceptions about the flu. A lot of people think when they have a stomach ache and they're throwing up and all of that that's always the flu, and that's not necessarily true. The flu is going to be more so when you have a respiratory illness. So you're having respiratory symptoms. You might, you'll have a fever, the coughing, maybe some trouble breathing. And so just in general, before even talking about food safety and the possibility of food poisoning, a lot of people have that misconception about the flu. It's probably true that sometimes when people think they have the flu, they do have some kind of food poisoning, something that they got, or some other kind of bacteria bug. And so, I can't say that every time someone has a stomach ache with the flu, it means they have food poisoning, but I definitely think there's probably a lot of people that do think they have the flu when they are actually having an issue with food poisoning.
Should we apply a sniff test to food to see if it's okay?
You definitely can. Obviously, your nose isn't always going to know if there's bacteria on food, but that's where it comes in when you're at the supermarket. So you're at the grocery store. If you see meat, you always check the expiration date, or really any kind of food, but specifically meat. You look at the expiration date. If it says it doesn't expire for 2 days, but it looks weird and it smells weird, trust your gut instinct that it's probably not good and choose another piece. It's very important to pay attention to those expiration dates. And, grocery stores aren't perfect. There are definitely some things that stay on the shelves when they shouldn't be up there anymore. So it's, common sense and personal responsibility to make sure that you're getting food that isn't expired, and then that you are watching how it looks and how it smells. So yes, it's a great idea to do that.
What do we need to consider about leftovers that we have?
The number one recommendation of importance is getting it in the refrigerator and store it as soon as possible. You don't want to let that stuff sit. If you have something that's nice and hot, you want to let it cool before you do put it straight into the refrigerator, but you don't want to leave it out. A lot of times Thanksgiving and other holiday events, stuff sits out the whole day long, and that's very dangerous. So you do want to get things put into the refrigerator. You want it to be in a nice airtight container so it doesn't have the opportunity for the bacteria to get in there and grow. If you're putting something straight into the freezer, you want to make sure you put it in an appropriate kind of container. Leave extra room because food does expand when it's in the freezer and liquid. And so those are the types of considerations that you should definitely be mindful of. And then not leaving your leftovers in the refrigerator or the freezer for too long and then consuming them. Refrigerator, you want to think about 3 to 4 days on something. Again, use the sniff test. If you take it out and it's been 3 days but it smells really bad or looks weird, don't eat it. Or if it has mold on it, obviously don't eat it. Refreezer, you should keep it about 2 months. Some people will keep things much, much longer than that. Again, that's a personal choice. But it's definitely important to get it stored as soon as possible and not let it sit out because your bacteria will start to grow.
Okay, so you said there's molds. Is there any like really bad kinds of mold, or like just some kind of good mold, like any type of difference?
You know, I don't know all the definitions of the different types of mold, but there are some different bacteria in your body that are healthy to have. So, you know, you can do tons of research about that, and you hear people talk about yogurt and the kind that have the probiotics. If your food sits out on the counter, though, that's going to grow the kind of mold that you don't want, that your body doesn't want, because it's going to have the bacteria that then will cause the food poisoning.
Well, we've been talking with Brandi Binkley from the Macon County Health Department. I'm Terrence.
And I'm Tiffany.
And thanks for watching.